Yo, what's up guys, welcome back to another video. This is a reaction to why America's weirdest state capital exists. So I done a reaction like, I think like 2 weeks ago at this point. It's quite hard to know when I've done reactions because I do them so like sporadically now. But it was a video on America's weirdest city. And I found it really interesting because it's just like there's a city in the US that's it's just like basically, I think it was a Jewish city, a Jewish town, a Jewish city, and in the city they have like even their own like sort of billboards that will have like, I think it's like Hebrew and stuff, and it just seemed like another country within a country. Right now it won't be as extreme as that because this is a state capital, and I don't really know how weird a state capital can be. I'm gonna just sort of assume it's gonna be like a state capital that's like in not necessarily these states, but like states that have a lower population. So the Dakotas. I'm not saying that it's going to be there because I don't know what cities, state capitals and stuff will be here. But I feel like in a state like that where it's just, you've probably got the higher chance of a city being a bit strange and then becoming a capital. That sounds mental. If you're from the Dakotas or whatever, I'm not calling you out. It's just, yeah, there's less people living there, and I feel like it's just a higher chance for some funky business to take place. But again, it's a state capital. I don't think it can get that weird, but I could be proven wrong. We're going to see. Hopefully going to enjoy. And let's check this video out.
State capitals are just one of America's many interesting geographic quirks. There are 50 state capitals, and each of these cities has their own history and story for exactly why they got there. It can range from historical importance to central locations, but all of this just boils down to how the geography of the state affected development. There are plenty of weird and interesting capitals in the U.S., like Pierce, South Dakota, which is home to just about 14,000 people and is located 30 miles off the highway.
It's not necessarily weird, but it's an interesting state capital, so I was not wrong with the Dakotas, so don't hate me.
Or Montpelier, Vermont, which really, when you think about it, is just a small town in the north part of the state.
It's pretty cute.
Anyway, a capital that I find much more interesting than any of the other examples across the country is Juno, Alaska. Without knowing the
okay, I see where this is going. Again, it's a very like it's a city far from everything, right? I'm trying to think of the word. I can't think of the word. It's a very easy word. Not I guess isolated city, actually, that probably works. Doesn't this like state capital not have any roads leading to it from like outside of this area here? I think it might be like that. I don't think you can actually drive like from Anchorage to Juno, for example. I'm pretty sure that's the case.
History of the state, it makes no sense why the capital would be a seemingly random city right off a glacier on the southeastern coastline. But there are some really interesting reasons why it was chosen and why it's still there today. So in this video, I wanted to talk about those reasons. Before we get into the video though, I'm geography top. So Juno is in the southeastern region of Alaska along the Alexander Archipelago, which consists of over 1,100 islands. And there are a few specific quirks that you notice off the bat. First off, the population is 32,000, which you might not expect from such a remote place, but those government jobs bring a lot of importance to the city. The population was the highest it's ever been.
So are all of these, like these people, where people are living here and then along this area here, are they all considered part of Juno or not? Because these areas look more populated than Juno itself.
City. The population was the highest it's ever been, but projections for 2023 show it losing 2.2%, so this may be the peak. There are a couple more quirks, starting with its size. It covers 3,254 square miles of land just in the incorporated city. This makes it the second largest city in the U.S. by total area, only beating out Sitka, yet another Alaskan city. This means Juno is larger than the state of Rhode Island. Now, you could point out that this is just how Alaskan cities work and it's not interesting, but outside the top 4 largest cities, Alaska has nothing in the top 100. So there's only so much that you can push that idea, and it does cause some interesting logistical issues of upkeeping such a large swath of land. Now, talking about the main oddity that we see with Juno, being that it is not connected to the outside world by road. This is the main one that jumps out at you because the state capital not being connected.
Not even just to Anchorage, but there's no roads connecting it to outside of Juno whatsoever.
To the rest of the state is unheard of in the rest of the country.
So what's the point in having a car? I guess the city itself is quite big. Actually, that makes sense to have a car here, but like, and I guess you can get the cars transported on boats. So actually, it does make sense, but such a random sort of area just to have a capital.
Obvious reasons. In a time of defense, transportation could be difficult. Getting people from the state legislature to and from Juno is more difficult than it has to be, and the entire part of the economy is taken away with truck travel. This lack of a road connection proves to be difficult for Juno, but it's easy to explain. As a small child, when I learned Juno had no road connections to the outside world, I decided this road had to be built as soon as possible. But as an adult, you can understand the situation. There are two real options, one of which would be connecting up to Haines in the north, and the second would be connecting into Canada in the east. To the north, you'd be building into a mountainside, but more importantly through 2 marine state parks and a state park.
Okay.
The type of environmental impact that would come from this would make it extremely difficult to get it approved with the process of NEPA and the environmental impact statements in a fragile environment like this.
That's
Plus,
fair.
a big bridge would need to be built somewhere, which isn't a viable option. So what about the other direction? The environmental impact may be difficult again, but at least there's no preserved federal land. Well, first off, you'd have to connect to Canada, and who wants to go through the process of that? Second of all, there's a big glacier here, so really you would have to build a bridge to get around that, which yet again takes away the option of that basically ever happening. So the moral of that story is that children should never get their hopes up. One main thing about the city that makes it strange is the state capitol building, which is the most unimpressive thing you've ever seen. This is what it looks like, basically just being a big office.
Oh, it's not that bad. From the view here, it looks pretty bad, and then it actually looks just like an average building. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. I guess for a state capital, it's not great.
This building with 4 pillars at the front. It's not even remotely similar to any other state capital, and I understand it's a unique situation in Juno, but it would make the city so much cooler if the state capital was awesome. I mean, the city is beautiful. Look around at the water and the mountains. They deserved a nice capitol building.
It's pretty cool.
Apparently it was designed by Treasury architects, which gave it more of a bank look. So I'd say in the future, maybe a different group of architects should be chosen. Anyway, now that we've explained how strange the city is, let's talk about why it exists, which obviously involves the state's fascinating history. So the settlement was established as a fishing place for native tribes, and Europeans found the settlement right around the end of the 18th century in 1764. In 1794, but things really started to kick off in the mid-1800s when gold was found in the region. 2 men named
It's always gold, man. It's always gold.
Richard Harris and Joe Juno found gold as large as beans in the area, so a mining camp was set up. Just a quick tidbit about that, Joe Juno was the cousin of Solomon Juno, which was one of the main founders of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So I guess establishing important cities runs in their family. I would argue this is significantly cooler than the Ball family. Anyway, in 1880, over 100 people resided in the mining community, and they decided to name it Juno, which obviously stuck until present day. So at this point, basically all of the development in the Alaskan territory was in this archipelago. And so as the turn of the century passed, one major change happened. This involved the neighboring city of Sitka. Remember Sitka from before when I talked about America's largest cities? Well, at this point, it was the capital and most important settlement in the archipelago. But as whaling and the fur trade declined and it lost its importance, the territorial legislature moved to Juneau. At this time, Juneau was the most populous city in the territory, and it stayed this way for around 50 years, until Anchorage passed it in the 1950s. This capital status became more official when the U.S. Congress allocated funds for their capital building. Now, obviously these funds were not enough, but the construction began in 1929. It was finished and stayed as the Capitol building through 1959 when Alaska officially became a state. At this time, the population jumped even higher when more government officials moved to the city. And I think this draws interesting attention to the fact that Alaska as a state is just very new. This is around when somewhere like Detroit had already reached its peak and started to decline in population. So honestly, let's give these areas in Alaska more time to see what their real demographics may look like in 50 years. Either way, the short answer to our question of why it's the capital is that it was already the territorial capital, so since it was around the same population as Anchorage when Alaska became a state, they gave Juneau the government. And that's just not a very easy thing to change after it's already done. But that leads us to one final question. Why not just change the capital? The discussion has been had for probably 40 years now, as basically everyone has realized.
I mean, Anchorage is like an actual major city, isn't it? Like, it's pretty big. I think it's like over 500,000, which is a pretty big city. So it would make sense, but I guess maybe just sentimental value. Plus, yeah, look at this place. It is pretty cool. Like, just the scenery. Imagine living somewhere like this. I mean, in the winter, it's got to be pretty brutal, I'll be honest. But it is pretty cool. Like, in the summer, I feel like this place would be like an amazing place to live.
The lack of importance Juneau has to the entire state present day. Other states had more central capitals or more important capitals, so people pushed for it to be moved to either Anchorage or Fairbanks, the 2 largest cities in the state. The main problem with this is that you wouldn't want to put it in either of the most important cities and suddenly give them too much influence in state politics. Making Anchorage the capital would centralize the state in that metropolitan area too heavily, and Anchorage wouldn't want to see Fairbanks gain capital powers, so it would need to be a third location. There was a popular initiative to relocate the capital to a new location in western Alaska that was over 30 miles away from both Anchorage and Fairbanks. And there was another plan that was passed for the capital to be moved to Willow, a city between Anchorage and Fairbanks. But this never ended up happening for one main reason. What would happen to Juno if it lost capital status? It would become significantly less important, and the people and government in Juno do not want to see this happen. Residents would do absolutely anything necessary to keep the capital in their city. So in the 1970s, when the Willow Plan was passed, pro-Juno supporters used some political loopholes to make sure it couldn't be moved. There's still pushes for it to be moved, but I think the political complications that would ensue if something like this was brought to a vote again would simply be enough to stop it. So I guess Juno is set for at least a good 30 to 50 years. But that's the entire
They
story.
can relax.
Juno has a
For now, Juno can relax.
fascinating history.
That's a mad city view. I know I keep saying this, but that is an unreal view.
And is one of my favorite capital cities in the country, with the historical importance that led to its current situation. Let's just take a moment to appreciate the mountains. I mean, those are so pretty.
Crazy.
It's really difficult to argue with that. Thanks for watching. Thank you to the members this week.
Well, there we go. Juno, an interesting place for sure. I mean, it is an interesting reason as to why it's become the capital, and the whole situation of no roads being connected to the city. It makes sense, but it's just mad to think that it is just enclosed to itself, and people must absolutely love that. People who live there must absolutely love that, right? I can see the appeal, but that is pretty mad. Montpelier, Vermont is a commuter city. People commute into town for their jobs in the day and then drive back home. It's a lot bigger in impact than the small population. I see. Juno is also a main port for call for Alaskan cruises. If the capital moved, it would not only be as affected as you might think. I lived in Juno for 13 years, and I would support the capital moving. It would free up lots of houses. Is it pricey to live there then? It would free up lots of houses and hopefully make it more affordable to live. Oh, that answers my question. Besides, we still have tourism and healthcare as economic drivers in the community. It's an interesting place, man. And even if a road were built from Skagway, it would only connect to the rest of the state via Canada. Oh damn. But there we go. It's an interesting place. I mean, I find this place pretty cool to live there. It's probably very expensive, like the person said. But if you got money and you can live there, you're probably loving it. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you're from here or if you've been here before, let me know your sort of experience, because it does definitely just intrigue me a lot. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Until next time, subscribe and peace.